We are acutely focused with our colleagues at the Southern District of New York and the FBI to figure out exactly what's going on, to pursue the case that we've got, to preserve assets to the extent we're able, and to bring everyone who is responsible for the conduct at the Madoff firm to justice.
A $7 million Manhattan apartment. That's where Bernard Madoff will spend the holidays instead of jail. Why the heck isn't this dirtbag in the slammer? New Yorkers are enraged. Everybody's enraged. The suspected Ponzi schemer, who is allegedly responsible for about $50 billion worth of investment fraud, will be home for the holidays. Madoff couldn't find 4 people to back his $10 million bond. So get this, the judge and prosecutors eased the stipulation and let him go after just his wife and brother co-signed. So he's wearing an electronic ankle bracelet, some new jewelry, some new bling, and has a curfew of 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. My question is he a flight risk? Can you say Mark Rich? Meanwhile, the SEC missed opportunities to uncover the scam as far back as 2006. Where is the accountability? Lisa Bloom, the anchor of In Session, joins me, along with the fabulous Greg Palast, reporter for the Rolling Stone magazine, Peter Fenn, a former Gore advisor and a Democratic strategist. Greg, why is this guy still living in the lap of luxury after admitting to what could be the largest fraud scheme in Wall Street history?
Well, let's face it, if he had boosted a PS2 from a Best Buy in Brooklyn, he'd be in Rikers. So, you know, instead, what I'd like to know is, how can I get sentenced to a Park Avenue apartment? What do I have to do? Please, I'll plead right now. Cuff me.
Lisa Bloom, the judge and the prosecution initially said they needed 4 co-signers. The 2 sons of this guy refused to co-sign. So what does the prosecution and the judge do? Oh, well, let's just change the rules and let him have 2 co-signers so he could go home.
Well, you know, I take issue with that, Jane. It may surprise you. I think that nonviolent criminals should be under house arrest instead of all of us taxpayers having to pay for them. Look, it costs over $50,000 a year just to keep somebody in jail. More expensive in prison. The guy is not yet convicted. He is only accused. Once he's convicted, it's a different story. But let him pay his own way. I don't want to pay for his jail. I don't want to pay for his food. I don't want to pay for his security. And by the way, those electronic monitors, they're pretty good.
Let me tell you something. They better have security watching this guy. Somebody, the NYPD, the FBI, the SEC, any one of those initials or other initials better be watching this guy. I'm wondering, Greg, if you think he could pull a Mark Rich and take off. Well, what has he got to lose?
Well, I mean, he could. What I'm concerned about is that it's really unequal treatment. I agree, yeah, we don't need a bunch of nonviolent criminals in jail on basically the government payroll. But he's a special exception. Why is this guy an exception? That's what I want to know. Why did they cut him extra slack for stealing allegedly $50 billion? Does he have a risk of taking off? We don't know where that money is. He might want to go rejoin his money.
Yeah, exactly. Peter Fenn, put this in perspective for us, because the SEC had been warned. There was this guy who launched a 10-year campaign to try to convince the SEC that something was fishy in Denmark with this Madoff guy, and he was unsuccessful until just recently.
Jane, this is outrageous. I mean, you had 8 years ago people blowing the whistle on him. You had reporters 7 years ago writing articles about him. You had people around him who were questioning where this money was going, how it was being made. The SEC was asleep at the switch, and a lot of people were asleep at the switch. I look, this guy has helped bring down our financial structure along with other Wall Street mavens. And I'll tell you, I think this guy should be in the slammer right now. And maybe he could have Rod Blagojevich as a cellmate here pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, I usually agree 100% with Lisa Bloom, but on this one, I got to say, listen, there's an attorney, Brad Friedman. He represents 100 people who lost their shirts. These people are distraught.
Allegedly,
they are emotional. Well, they've lost the money. That's for sure.
Well,
when the
a lot of
bank
people have
account's
lost money
empty.
on Wall Street, though, Jane, and the man has not yet been convicted of anything. He's only been accused, and the same for Blagojevich, by the way.
Oh,
so I was one of the first to say, look, You know, guess what? Our system, innocent until proven guilty. Once the guy's convicted, we can throw the book at him, but not before.
This is the thing. I think it's elitist and it's frankly racist.
Absolutely.
It's racist to let this guy scoot off. He's a man about town. He has this electronic ankle bracelet when shoplifters and pickpockets and prostitutes and everybody else who's on the lower end of the spectrum, who generally have a tendency to be a minority, end up in the slammer.
Yeah, but here's the problem, Jane. I mean, if we start incarcerating non-violent criminals who are only accused of crimes, we are already busted at the seams in our jails, all right? We are already, let me talk for a minute. We are already releasing violent criminals early. Why? Because we don't have unlimited resources in this country. We especially don't have that in a time of recession. We have to make tough choices. One choice is to say that non-violent criminals who are not yet convicted of a crime, only accused, will let them pay their own way on house arrest. I think that's a wise decision.
Well, listen,
I think this is violent, Jane. I think this is so violent that he took $50 billion and squandered it for his own purposes. This is more violent than Jean Valjean stealing some bread in Les Miserables.
I'm talking about rapists and murderers.
I mean, I'm sorry.
It has been described as financial murder, in fact. People are absolutely devastated. Charities that could have saved lives have been wiped out. So people could literally die because of the behavior of this man.
Look, I mean, you can make use all the rhetorical language you want. What he's accused of is terrible. But if you talk to the family of a rape victim or a murder victim, I think they're going to beg to differ that this is a violent crime and that these other guys should go free so that this guy gets a place in jail. I just don't think it's comparable. I think jail is a place for violent criminals. We have to keep our eye on the ball.
Let me just say I agree with you, but I think the first thing we need to do is get all the drug offenders out, because a lot of them are non-violent.
We agree on that one, Jane.
Let's legalize drugs so we can arrest real criminals. Stay right there. More fallout from the Madoff Ponzi scheme. It's unbelievable when we come right back. Take a look at this dramatic confrontation as Bernie Madoff returns back to his fancy Manhattan penthouse and a photographer gets into a confrontation with him. This is an example of the rage that is being felt on the streets of New York over this absolutely unprecedented alleged Ponzi scheme that is said to have wiped out billions and billions and billions of dollars. Back with Lisa Bloom, Greg Palast, and Peter Fenn. Peter, why haven't his assets been seized? He's got that fancy apartment. He's got a house in Montauk. He's got a house in Palm Beach.
This guy shouldn't own a thing, Jane.
Yeah.
Everything should be taken from him. He's been ripping these people off now for nearly a decade. He's really caused a destruction in confidence in the markets in New York. This is another, the American people right now are sure that there are more of these. Hopefully there won't be.
Right.
But this guy should be held an example. People should be held accountable for stuff like this.
Greg Palast, the SEC, and this family had a connection. His niece was married to somebody who had been an SEC official.
Well, this is the snoozy C. It's not just Madoff. My God, we go all the way back from Ken Lay and since then. Let's not forget that hedge funds for only 1 year were required to report their assets, and none of them matched up. I mean, Madoff isn't alone. Madoff is not alone. We need to put the pressure on him to say who else is in on his game, knew what he was doing, and is copying his game. He wasn't alone in this, believe me. And the other thing is, how come they're not going through his apartment looking for the evidence? If he's in that apartment, he's working on destroying the records, believe me.
Oh, I agree that this is, he's being treated with kid gloves, Lisa.
Unreal.
Well, I don't know what they've seized. I don't know what evidence they've gone through. You're absolutely right, Jane. They should be seizing his assets. They should be freezing everything that he has. I'd be very surprised if they haven't already done that, if they don't do that soon, because every nickel that he owns is going to be gone very, very quickly. That's what he's a master of, allegedly. He's the master of just getting rid of money, poof, making it go away, making it go God knows where.
It doesn't disappear. Usually when people steal things, it's to make money, not just to lose it. All right. Well, we have to unfortunately leave it right there, but I'd love to have you all back to discuss this more. This story is not going away.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Lisa, Greg, Peter, and thank you at home for joining me tonight.